What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Dark World deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an extremely powerful deck to play this format, especially since we just got an amazing new engine to use in this build. The new Jin cards, which are such powerful cards to be able to play in Dark Worlds, completely changing the deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Rainbow. This card is a definite 3-of in the build, and it's just such an amazing card in the deck, because you can actually special summon this card from your graveyard by returning a level 7 or lower Dark World monster that you control back to your hand. And if this card is discarded by a card effect, you can add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, which is such a cool ability to be able to use with this card. We then play 2 copies of Grapha. Grapha as a 2-of is all you really need in this build because it's so easy to get to, but it's a really cool card because you can special summon this card from your graveyard by returning any one face-up Dark World monster back to your hand, and if this card is discarded to the graveyard, you actually get to pop a card on the field, which is a great effect. We then play 2 copies of Silva. Silva is an amazing card in this deck because this card actually lets you hand loop your opponent because it has the ability, if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card from the grave. Then, if this card was discarded from your hand to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, your opponent returns exactly 2 cards from their hand to the bottom of their deck in any order, which is an insane ability to be able to loop this card to basically make it so your opponent starts with 0 cards, which is such a cool ability. We then play 3 copies of Snow. Snow is a definite 3-of in the build because this card is actually a searcher, because if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 Dark World card from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Genta. Genta's a definite 3-of as well because this card lets you discard it to the graveyard to be able to add 1 The Gates of the Dark World from your deck to your hand, which is an amazing field spell to search off this card's ability. It also has the effect that if this card is banished, and you control a Dark World card, you can special summon this card, which is an amazing ability, but it's a once per turn ability. We then play 3 copies of Brow. Brow is basically the upstart goblin of the deck because it has the effect that if this card is discarded to the grave by a card effect, you get to draw a card. We then play a single copy of Cerule. Cerule is a really good card to be able to play in this build, because if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, then you can special summon this card from the graveyard to your opponent's side of the field in face-up defense position. And when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dark World card, which it was by its own ability, your opponent must discard a card, meaning we will discard a card, not our opponent, which is such a cool ability because then it'll make our Dark World cards go off, which is amazing. This card comes in extremely handy with our copy of Silva because it'll make Silva's effect to be able to put 2 cards from our opponent's hand on the bottom of the deck go off to hand loop our opponent. Plus we have ways to be able to bounce our copy of Cerule back to hand, and it's not a once per turn for our copy of Cerule, so we can actually go through it multiple times to loop our opponent's hand back to the bottom of the deck. So that's it for the Dark World monsters. Let's get into the other monsters we're playing in this build. So for the other monsters we're playing in this deck, we're going to start off with the dangers we're playing in the deck. And that's going to start off with a single copy of Danger Bigfoot. So all of your danger monsters share an amazing common effect that you can reveal them in your hand. Your opponent randomly chooses a card from your entire hand, and then you discard the chosen card. And if the discarded card was not the revealed danger monster, you special summon that danger monster from your hand, and then if you do, draw a card. But if you discarded the revealed danger monster, or you discard a danger monster by an effect, you get a bonus cool effect that has the ability for your copy of Danger Bigfoot's unique ability that if it's discarded, you actually get to target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a crazy powerful effect. We then play a single copy of Danger Thunderbird. If this card is discarded, it has a really cool ability to target a set card your opponent control and destroy it. We then play 3 copies of Danger Nessie. Danger Nessie is really good in this deck as a 3-of because it has the ability, if this card card is discarded, then you can add a danger card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. We then play 2 copies of Danger Mothman. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, both players draw a card and then both players discard a card, which is a really cool ability to be able to use with this card. We then play a single copy of Danger Chupacabra. Chupacabra is really good as a one-of because if this card is discarded, then you actually get to target a danger monster in your graveyard, except a copy of Chupacabra and special summon it, which comes in really handy with your copy of, say, Bigfoot to bring back a really big monster from the grave to your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Jackalope. Jackalope's great in this deck as a one-of because if this card is discarded, you can special summon a danger monster from your deck and defense position, which is a great ability. We then play a single copy of Tsuchinoko. Tsuchinoko, or the Danger Noodle, is really cool in this deck as a one-of because if this card is discarded, you just get to special summon it. So regardless when you reveal this card, you're going to get to special summon it, which is such a cool effect. We then move on into the new engine, which is going to be 3 copies of Jin the Diamond Tiger. This card is amazing in the deck as a 3-of because it has an insane ability. Once per turn, at the end of the battle phase, return this card from the field back to the hand. And you can only use the following effects this card once per turn, that during your main phase, you can special summon 1 Kin, the Warrior Dragon, from your hand or deck to your opponent's side of the field in defense position. And if this card is special summoned by the effect of Kin, the Diamond, or the Kin, the Warrior Dragon, discard a card, which is a crazy powerful effect that you basically hand this card to your opponent and make them discard a card, which is a really neat thing about this card. We then play a single copy of Kin the Warrior Dragon, which is the card that you want to hand to your opponent because this card has the ability that if this card is special summoned by the effect of Jin the Diamond Tiger, your opponent draws 2 cards and then discards a card, which since this card was controlled by the opponent and it's their card, making our Dark World effects go off. Plus, it lets us draw 2 and discard a card when we give this card to the opponent, which is insane. I absolutely love this card in the deck as a one-of to be able to work with our copies of Jin, but I really feel like Jin is the better summon to be able to give our opponent Kin, so we can get a draw 2 and discard 1, and it'll make our Dark World effects go off, which is so cool. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of Card Destruction. Card Destruction is an amazing one-of in the deck, basically just to discard both players' hands. This card is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck because it makes all of our cards go off that's in our hand, because pretty much every monster in the entire deck goes off when it's discarded to the graveyard, making us go to insane chain links with this deck. And then play a single copy of Dark Corridor. You only need a single copy of this card in the deck now with how consistent it is, and this card is amazing because it lets you add a Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, then discard a card, making your Dark World cards go off. But since it's a once per turn, we only play a single copy now. We then play a single copy of the Dark World Fusion spell. This card is amazing as a one-of because it lets us, during the main phase, fusion summon a Fiend Fusion monster from our extract by banishing materials mentioned on it from our field or graveyard. And if you fusion summon a Dark World monster this way, you can also discard monsters as a material, making this card a definite one-of in the deck to help us summon out Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. And during your main phase, if this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand and then discard a Dark World monster, making your Dark World monsters go off again. We then play a single copy of Dark World Archives. This card is really good as a one-of in the build and helps out a lot in the deck overall, because during your main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster. Then, if you do, Dark World monsters that you currently control gain attack equal to the level of the discarded monster had in the hand times 100 until the end of this turn. And if a monster whose original type is Fiend is discarded from your hand by the effect of a Dark World card or by an opponent's card effect, even during the damage step, you can discard a card and then draw 2 cards, which is insane. We then play a single copy of Triple Tactics Thrust. Thrust is amazing because it works really well with our Kin Jin package, which is why we're playing this card as a one-of in the build, plus it can get you your copy of Dark Corridor or your copy of Card Destruction, which is so cool. We then play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. Triple Tactics Talent is really good in this build now because it lets us draw 2, take control of an opponent's monster, or look at our opponent's hand and be able to shuffle a card into the deck, which can help us loop our copy of Silva, which is amazing. Plus, if you want to to, and you do need a budget option for the deck, you can drop the 1 copy of Thrust for a 3rd copy of Talents, or if you already have Talents and Thrust, you can play a 2nd copy of Thrust and just play 1 talent if you want to, if you already have 2 copies of this card. But if you don't have this card, just play a 3rd copy of Talents instead for a more budget option instead of playing the copy of Thrust, just for a little more budget option for you guys. We then play 3 copies of the Gates of the Dark World. The Gates of the Dark World, what is amazing is all Fiend type monsters gain 300 attack and defense points, and once per turn you can banish a Fiend from your grave, discard a Fiend from your hand, and then draw a card, which basically just banishes one of your Fiends like a copy of Jinta, so it can bring itself back to your side of the field. Then you have the ability to be able to discard a Fiend to make one of your copies of your Dark Worlds go off, and then you draw a card as well, just adding more pluses to this card, which is just absolutely amazing. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. This card is an amazing 2-of in the build, and it's super easy to summon to your side of the field, just requiring Grapha plus any dark monster to make this card. And when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell trap card while you have a card in your hand, quick effect, you can activate this effect, that the activated effect becomes your opponent discards a card, which is such a powerful effect about this card that basically it changes the ability of whatever your opponent activates to we discard a card, making our Dark World cards go off. This card also has a really cool ability. If this fusion summon card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon out 1 Grapha to your side of the field, which is such a cool ability just to instantly get Grapha to your side of the field, and I love that about this card. Then both players with a hand discard a card. We then play a single copy of number 60. Number 60 is really good, so let's just draw 2 and discard a card, special summon a monster back from the graveyard, or double the attack of a monster, which is such a cool ability about this card. It's just a great extender overall. We then play a single copy of Typhon because it's super easy to make in just about any deck, which is why we play this card as a 1-of in the build. We then play a single copy of Underworld Goddess because we can put a lot of monsters on board, so we can make a copy of Underworld Goddess to deal with a card on our opponent's side of the field. Play a single copy of Yugioh. Yugioh is really good in the deck as a 1-of to be able to draw 4 and then put 3 back to fix our hand just in case we need to, and also lets us special summon a monster from the hand, which is amazing. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Griffin because we can Griffin lock in this deck, which is insane, basically turning it into a one-sided skill drain, which is so cool. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa because we can put multiple monster negates on the field. Sometimes you can end with this with 4 negates, and it's usually enough to win the game. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps, 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer because we do play pretty much Dark in the deck exclusively, 1 copy of Akashic Magician. This card helps us bounce our copy of Cerule back to hand, so we can use its effect again to give it to our opponent again so that we can discard our copy of Silva again to hand loop our opponent. We then play a single copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight is great in the deck as a 1-of, and it's a really cool card in this deck because basically it has the ability, if this card is link summoned using a Fusion, Synchro, Exe, or Link monster as a material, you can target 1 card on the field or in either player's graveyard and banish it. Also, monster you control cannot attack directly this turn. And when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can actually target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a monster you control, and banish both until the end phase, essentially banishing this card and an opponent's monster, which is super cool. If you want a more budget option for this card, you can play something like an Access Code Talker if you want to, or an Abyss Dweller over this card, or even Baguska if you want to play those instead of the SP Little Knight for another budget option. We then play a single copy of Munraker. This card is basically a walking monster reborn, which is really good, especially to combo with our copy of Nightmare Griffin, which is just insane because this card will point to the Nightmare Griffin, which is amazing. We then finally play a single copy of IP Masquerena. IP is amazing in this deck as a 1-of to help us go in for SP Little Knight or Unicorn during the opponent's turn, which is just super cool, or even Underworld Goddess, which is just amazing. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Dark World before, you should definitely give this deck a try, especially now that we have the Ken and Jin cards, which just takes this deck to a whole new level, giving us an amazing normal summon in the deck, and just basically increasing the ceiling of this deck. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.